Hi everyone, Tom Simmons coming to you with our weekly lesson for Business 105, Personal Financial Literacy. And the subject of today's lesson is budgeting. And budgeting is something that every household should do. Most do not. The reality is the vast majority of people simply get bills in the mail, pay them when their paycheck comes in, and don't live on a particular budget. And budgeting doesn't have to be scary, it doesn't have to be complicated. And that's the second problem. Many people who try and actually live by a budget or have a budget go online and they find some template or some fill-in-the-blank budget that was made for a generic person. Well, none of us are generic people. We all have very specific expenses, very specific living situations, and trying to cram what we do into a template that's been offered online can often be frustrating. And when something is frustrating, it means you stop doing it or you don't do it. So what I'd like to do today is offer you, I believe, 7 tips on how to make a budget work for you. And the very first tip I'm going to give you is what I call, number 1, real budgeting. Not presumed budgeting, but real budgeting. In my economics class, one of the things I have my students do every semester is go out and price the changes of goods in a supermarket between 2 different months. And before they actually do that, I ask them, what do you think the inflation rate is? How much are prices going up? And very often students will say, oh, they're always going up. Oh, they're going up at 10%, 5%, or they'll come up with some number because prices are always going up. And then I'll actually have them price the goods that they buy month to month to month. And then they come back to the classroom scratching their head because not only have the prices of those goods not changed, some of them have actually gone down. And so what we have is people have a perception of what is happening with money or prices or finances, but that perception is not always what is really taking place. So one of the first things we need to do if we're going to have a household budget is figure out what are we spending. And every one of you can probably say, oh, well, I spend about $120 a month on this and $400 a month on this, and I think our food bill is about $500 a month. Well, guessing or having a general idea or saying, oh, I think it's this amount, that is not going to work. You need to do what I call real budgeting. You need real numbers, not just pulling them out of the air or what your best guess is. So, what you're going to do this week is a project that I have uploaded to our website that is specifically going to require you to figure out what are you actually spending on the major categories of expenditures in your life. Not what you think you're spending, but what you're really spending. And so I'll ask you to go to our website and download that document because that will go on for 3 pages telling you as to what I want you to do and how I want you to do it for that. Now, the second important thing about budgeting is that you need to use sensible categories of expenditures. So, sometimes people will be so focused on details that it's just too much. For instance, you don't need to have a budget for food and a budget for cleaning supplies and a budget for pet food. Just have a budget for grocery shopping. All right? Your budget has to be specific to your needs and your patterns of living. So some of you will have childcare. That'll be a major expense in and of itself. Probably most of you will have tuition. That will be a major category all by itself. And then you have your auto insurance, your rent or your mortgage. There are certain categories, but keep them broad. Don't get bogged down in details. Keep them broad and keep them specific to you. So point 3. When you make yourself a monthly budget, you're going to have certain expenses that you have every month. And they could be your rent or mortgage, a car payment, health insurance, credit card bills, anything that comes every month. And what you want to do is list these expenses by the day on which they are due. Your credit card bill, if it's due the 19th of May, it's probably due the 19th of June and the 19th of July. They don't change that much. Same as your electric bill, same as your rent. Put them in order so you have a list of what bills are normally due on what day of the month. Now, separate from that, you're going to make a similar list for your income. Some people get paid every week. Most people get paid every 2 weeks. Some get paid once a month. Put that also in order. When are your paychecks coming? Now, for me, I get paid every 2 weeks. So I refer to the paycheck in the first half of the month as paycheck A. And I refer to the paycheck I get in the second half of the month as paycheck B. All right? This is not rocket science. But now here's what you want to do. If, like me, you get paid twice a month, and if you don't, you make adjustments as this makes sense. When I look at paycheck A, which comes in the beginning of the month, I want that to be able to cover my expenses in the second half of the month. In other words, we're not getting paid and then all of a sudden we have to pay things that are due today or that were due yesterday. That paycheck that I'm getting on the, let's say, the 10th of a particular month will be going to pay bills that are normally due from the 15th to the end of the month. Similarly, my paycheck B, which comes at the end of the month, so let's say it comes around the 24th, I want that to pay for bills that are due in the first half of the following month. In other words, you always want to be ahead so that when the paycheck comes, you have money for bills that you haven't even received yet and that haven't come due yet. It's for the future pay period. So, in order to do that, you need to list your expenses so you know when they come, and your paychecks, you know when they come. And if you find that you have too many expenses crammed into a 2-week period, and many people will find this in the beginning of the month because their rent is due and they have all these expenses at the beginning of the month, it's okay to call those companies up and say, can we move my payment date to, from the 5th of the month to the 20th of the month, to balance it out and make it a little more manageable for you. Most companies are very willing to do that, but you need to take the initiative of asking them to do that, and that'll make it much easier to assign the income from a paycheck to a particular set of bills. Now, having said that, you also need to budget for non-monthly expenses. And this is where many people have their budget blown to bits. You probably, if you own a home or you pay for your own oil gets delivered 2 or 3 times a year. And you may spend $1,200 on your home heating oil bill. But you get slammed with a $600 bill in December, and then you get slammed with it again in March. And if you don't plan ahead for those, then they become major budget busters. And you say, well, there goes my budget for this month because I just got a $600 bill. There's a series of bills that come like that you can plan for. not only oil, but things such as your tuition and things such as car registration, things that come once a year. If you've got $1,200 in oil bills in the course of 1 year, that doesn't mean you dredge up $600 or $1,200 when the oil gets delivered. It means in your monthly chart of monthly expenses, you put $100 aside in a savings account, in escrow, to cover your oil bill. And that way, when it gets delivered and it comes, it's not a budget buster. You've actually got the money sitting there and you pay it. And if you think of these particular items as monthly bills rather than one-shot deals, you'll do a much better job handling your money, handling your finances, making sure that you have enough to cover bills, than if you just wait until you get slammed with this enormous bill. That also goes for things like auto repairs. And people will say, oh, I needed a brake job, I wasn't expecting that. Or I needed this change to my car, I wasn't expecting that. You know what? If you've got an old car, expect it. It's going to happen. So maybe you put $50 aside in escrow, in that savings account, specifically for auto repairs. What you find as you do this is that at the end of the month, right now you may say, ooh, I got $200 free cash. Ooh, I can go spend it at a restaurant or something. No, you don't, because you need to take that and put it towards the oil bill that hasn't come, and the vehicle registration that hasn't come, the auto repair that hasn't come. So, am I a killjoy in this? Yeah, I am. What I'm saying is you have less money than you think because of those one-time expenses. So you might as well take the bull by the horns and plan for it. Number 5, a number of people have asked me about auto withdrawal, which is where the bank takes the money out of your account every month for a particular expense. And this very much, it depends on your personality. On the pro side, you don't have to worry about the bill. The bill will be paid. A lot of insurance companies like to do this. The bill will be paid. It'll never be late. You won't get a late fee. And you rest easy about that. There are some strong downsides to this, though. The first is you may forget that that withdrawal is coming. And you're saying to yourself, oh, well, I've got $75 in my checking account, so I'm okay. Forgetting that $105 is going to be withdrawn, and then maybe returned, and then maybe you get bank fees added to that, and overdraft charges and all this kind of thing, because you forgot it's coming. But for me, and the reason I don't use automatic withdrawal, is because I want to be proactively in charge of my money. I am deciding what goes in and out of my account, not someone else. That's just my personality. But by taking control of your bank account, it's one step psychologically towards taking control of your entire financial picture. You decide what goes in and what goes out. That you've got to decide based on your personality. However, whether you use automatic withdrawal or not, point number 6, you must be proactive. You must be in charge. When the bill collector calls, and bill collectors will call and say, you're late on this bill, so can we schedule you for a payment next Friday? Many people are embarrassed when that happens. They feel intimidated. They know they should have paid that bill and they didn't yet, and they say yes. Do not say yes. Say no. You may not put me down for paying this bill on Friday because I know that I'm getting some income 10 days from now and I intend on paying it off. And no, you cannot put down a check with a 10-day delay on it. No. You take control. Now, on a similar vein to that, a number of years ago I lived in Shelburne Falls. And there were a whole group of us living in one house. We each had our own apartments, and we each had the same oil company. Well, it turns out that the oil company we were using charged a higher rate if you used a lower amount of oil. Which meant here we all were trying to reduce our oil consumption, being a little chilly in the winter, and we actually got charged higher rates as individuals. We finally went to the company and said, no, if you're giving lower rates to people who buy in bulk, you got a group of us living in this apartment, we want to be treated as if we were a single purchaser. You come to the house once, you fill up all our tanks, you give us that rate. We ended up getting $1 a gallon of oil off. Simply because we took the initiative of going and saying, no, we're not going to do this. We want you to do this. It's okay to take charge, and I want you to take charge of your finances. And you've got to be proactive, and you've got to be strong about it. Last tip for budgeting, and I probably shouldn't have to say this, but I will say it anyway and end with this. You got to be frugal, guys. If you're buying a Dunkin' Donuts coffee every day on your way to work, what you spend in coffee in the course of a week could actually make enough coffee at your home if you buy a can of coffee for a month. And if you think that doesn't add up, it does. You'll save $1,000 a year just making your coffee at home instead of grabbing it at the store. And I know right now it's very trendy to say, hey, help support your local restaurant and go out and order a meal. Your first duty is to you and your family. And if you've got extra money to spend on a meal out at a restaurant, great. But you better make that determination first that you actually have that money to spend before you decide to save everyone else while you're going down the tubes. It's okay to wear a $2 shirt that you got at a flea market or a thrift store, like I'm doing right now. It's okay not to have the latest, the greatest, the newest, the shiniest, because eventually there'll be another new, latest, greatest, shiniest that company's going to want you to trade in for. So be frugal. There's nothing wrong with it. It's okay. So this has been an overview of budgeting and 7 quick ways to make your budgeting real, to make it workable, to make it have sense for you instead of just filling in blanks that you see on a form on the internet. Make sure you download the instruction sheet that I've put on our class website, and that will help you get through the very first steps of this process. Thanks again. We'll see you next week.